You know that English idiom, turn over a new leaf? Never translate it literally. Want to know why?
Why not? Turn over a new leaf. Doesn't it just mean flipping over a new leaf?
Absolutely not. It actually means to make a fresh start, or to begin again with better behavior. But yesterday, my foreign client said, let's turn over a new leaf starting tomorrow. And I thought, new leaf? I get it. First thing in the morning, I went straight to the conference room plant and started flipping all the leaves one by one. Then he just stared at me and said, what on earth are you doing? I was so embarrassed.
Oh my God. So that's why they call them idioms, because they make you look like an idiot if you take them literally.
Wait, you're not going to believe this story about my friend Mark. He was in this big meeting when his boss said, for this tough project, we're just going to have to bite the bullet.
Oh no, don't tell me he took it literally.
He absolutely did. Mark had no idea what the phrase meant, but he was too nervous to ask, so he just nodded and said, I'm on it.
Classic mistake. When you don't know something, just pretend you do.
Exactly. So what does Mark do? That night, he actually goes online and orders a metal bullet replica, a literal bullet, and brings it to work the next day.
No way. That's next level commitment to misunderstanding.
I know. So everyone's gathered in the conference room for this big project kickoff, and Mark stands up, looking all confident, and says, everyone, I'll take the lead on this. And then...
Oh God, what did he do?
He pulls out this metal bullet, holds it up for everyone to see, and starts trying to put it in his mouth.
Stop! I can picture the entire room just freezing.
Complete silence. His boss's face just dropped, like jaw on the floor. Everyone's staring at him. And poor Mark is there thinking, this thing is going to break my teeth. But he's committed now.
The dedication is impressive, though. Gotta give him that.
Right? And he's still trying to bite this metal thing when his boss finally says, Mark, what the hell are you doing?
At least someone finally asked the important question.
So Mark, still holding this bullet, says, I'm biting the bullet, sir, just like you asked. And his boss is like, that's not what that means.
I'm actually curious now. What is the real origin of bite the bullet anyway?
That's the interesting part. It actually comes from battlefield medicine. Back before anesthesia, when doctors had to perform surgery during war, they'd give the wounded soldier a bullet to bite on to help them endure the pain.
So the idiom means to face something difficult or unpleasant with determination.
Exactly. It means to accept or endure a painful situation because it can't be avoided, not literally putting metal in your mouth.
So what happened to Mark? Did he get fired?
Surprisingly, no. His boss actually used it as a teachable moment about communication. But Mark did chip a tooth trying to bite that thing before someone stopped him. Had to rush to the dentist that afternoon.
That's actually a pretty expensive English lesson.
Definitely. And the worst part is, everyone in the office now calls him Bullet Biter behind his back.
Office nicknames are forever. That's brutal.
The moral of the story is, if you don't understand an idiom, just ask. Don't try to wing it, especially if it involves putting strange objects in your mouth.
Solid advice for life in general, I'd say.
But wait, the elephant in the room story is even worse.
Hold up. You're not telling me someone actually brought an elephant somewhere?
That's exactly what I'm telling you. And it's even crazier than Mark's bullet incident.
How is that even possible? Like, logistically, where would you even get an elephant?
My buddy James was in this super important client meeting, and the client goes, we need to address the elephant in the room about the budget shortfall.
And let me guess, he had no idea what that meant.
None whatsoever. He's sitting there thinking, elephant in the room? What does that even mean? But instead of asking, he just nodded confidently and said, leave it to me.
The classic nod and pretend you understand technique. Works every time, until it doesn't.
Exactly. So James goes home that night completely stressed out. He's thinking, I promised to handle this elephant situation, but what the heck does that mean?
At this point, just Google it, man.
That would be the sensible approach. But no. Instead, he decides the client must want some kind of elephant prop for the presentation the next day.
Oh no.
Oh yes! So he rushes online and orders an overnight delivery of this massive stuffed elephant toy, pays extra for the rush shipping and everything.
This is already painful to hear.
The next morning, he shows up at the meeting room early, lugging this giant elephant plush that barely fit through the door. He's sweating, but also feeling pretty proud of himself.
I'm getting secondhand embarrassment just imagining this.
When everyone arrives, including the big client, James stands up with this look of total confidence and announces, "Everyone, as requested, I've prepared the elephant for the room." And he dramatically reveals this huge stuffed elephant.
Complete silence?
Total pin drop silence. You could hear people blinking. The client just stares at him with this confused expression and finally says, when I mentioned the elephant in the room, I was talking about the obvious budget problem that nobody wanted to discuss."
Oof, that's rough.
James just stood there holding this giant elephant, and you could literally see the realization wash over his face.
So what's the actual meaning of elephant in the room anyway?
It refers to an obvious problem or difficult situation that everyone knows about, but nobody wants to discuss. It's like if there was literally an elephant standing in a room with people, everyone would notice it, but they might pretend it's not there because it's awkward.
That actually makes sense as a metaphor. It's about ignoring obvious issues.
Exactly. The origin comes from the absurdity of the image. If there were an actual elephant in a room, it would be ridiculous for everyone to pretend they don't see it.
So what happened to James after his elephant reveal?
Well, surprisingly, the client actually thought it was a brilliant visual metaphor for their budget issues. They assumed James had done it intentionally to break the tension.
Talk about falling upward. So he accidentally succeeded?
Completely by accident. They thought he was a creative genius for making the metaphor literal. The meeting went great after that initial shock wore off.
That's one way to address the elephant in the room. Bring an actual elephant.
Sometimes the most embarrassing mistakes turn into unexpected wins, but I wouldn't recommend trying this strategy deliberately.
No, definitely not. But I have to ask, what happened to the elephant afterward?
It now sits in their office conference room as a mascot. Whenever someone needs to bring up an uncomfortable topic, they point to the elephant.
That's actually kind of brilliant. They turned an idiom misunderstanding into a communication tool.
Exactly, but trust me, the get your ducks in a row story is even wilder.
Wait, don't tell me someone brought actual ducks to work?
That's exactly what happened. And not just one duck. We're talking multiple ducks causing absolute chaos. You know who's the absolute champion of idiom misunderstandings? My friend Dave. When his boss told him to get his ducks in a row before the big presentation.
Oh no. Please tell me he didn't actually find real ducks.
That's exactly what he did. His boss assigns him this major project and says, "Dave, I need you to get your ducks in a row before the board meeting on Thursday."
And Dave had no idea what that meant.
None whatsoever. But instead of asking or looking it up, he just nodded like he understood completely.
The universal response when you don't want to look stupid.
Right? So Dave goes back to his desk and starts Googling, but instead of searching for the meaning of the phrase, he searches where to rent ducks near me.
You're kidding. There are places that rent ducks.
Apparently. He found this small petting zoo about 30 minutes from the office that rents animals for children's parties. And he actually called them up and arranged to rent 5 ducks for his office event.
5 seems excessive for whatever he thought he needed them for.
That's Dave. Go big or go home. So Thursday morning, he arrives 2 hours early with this large pet carrier. The security guard was super confused.
I can imagine. Sir, what's in the box?
And the quacking probably gave it away instantly. Dave smuggles these 5 ducks into the conference room before anyone arrives and tries to get them to stand in a straight line.
I'm just picturing a grown man trying to reason with ducks. Please, my job depends on this.
Exactly. He's down on his hands and knees, placing little breadcrumbs in a row, trying to coax these ducks to line up. But ducks aren't exactly known for following directions.
Or respecting the sanctity of important business documents.
Not at all. By the time people started arriving for the meeting, the ducks had completely taken over. They were waddling all over the conference table, knocking over coffee cups. There were feathers everywhere. And let's just say the table wasn't exactly clean anymore.
Oh no. Ducks aren't exactly house-trained.
Definitely not. So his manager walks in and just stops dead in his tracks. The room is in complete chaos. Papers everywhere, duck droppings on the presentation boards, and Dave is still frantically trying to get them in a straight line.
What did his boss do?
He just yells, "Dave, what on earth is happening?" And poor Dave, looking completely defeated, just gestures at the ducks and says in this tiny voice, "I'm getting my ducks in a row, like you asked."
That might be the most literal interpretation of an idiom I've ever heard.
His boss was speechless for like a full minute. He finally explains that getting your ducks in a row just means getting organized and prepared. It comes from the image of mother ducks leading their ducklings in a neat line.
So he didn't need actual ducks, just organization.
Exactly. But by then, the damage was done. The meeting had to be postponed because, well, you can't exactly have a professional presentation in a room that's been taken over by waterfowl.
Did Dave get fired?
Surprisingly, no. His boss was obviously mad. But once the story spread around the office, it became this legendary tale. They even added a rubber duck mascot to the company logo for internal communications.
So it actually worked out for him in the end?
Kind of. Though he did have to pay for professional cleaning of the conference room, and I think he's still paying off the damage to one executive's designer suit.
I'm guessing there's a lesson in all this mayhem.
Several lessons. First, if you don't understand an idiom, just ask or look it up. Second, never attempt to organize actual ducks. And third, always double check before bringing live animals to work.
All solid life advice.
The funny thing is, there's actually a deeper lesson here about language and communication, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Wait, you can't just tease that and move on. What's the deeper lesson?
Well, first we need to talk about why these idiom misunderstandings happen in the first place. It's not just about language, it's about how our brains work. Misunderstanding English idioms can be so embarrassing in the workplace, right? But have you ever wondered why these misunderstandings happen in the first place?
I think about this all the time. It's fascinating how our brains work with language.
It really comes down to cultural differences. Idioms are deeply rooted in a language's cultural background and history. When we learn a new language, we bring our own cultural framework into it.
Exactly, like how English speakers would be totally confused if someone told them they're so busy they'd borrow a cat's paws for help, or that scales fell from their eyes when they suddenly understood something.
Those would sound completely bizarre without cultural context, and we've seen how literal interpretation of English idioms can go terribly wrong. Remember that story about Alex?
The break a leg incident? Oh my God, that was painful just to hear about.
So Alex was auditioning for this community theater production, and the director tells him, break a leg before he goes on stage.
Let me guess, he took it literally?
Not completely, but close. He thought it meant he needed to pretend to have a broken leg for the role, so mid-audition, he suddenly starts limping dramatically and moaning in fake pain.
No way. What happened?
The director stopped everything and asked what he was doing. When Alex explained, everyone just stared at him in awkward silence. He didn't get the part.
Ouch. That's a special kind of embarrassment.
Then there was this exchange student who heard, "It's raining cats and dogs" during a rainstorm and spent 10 minutes looking up at the sky in confusion.
Waiting for the pets to fall?
Exactly. She later told her roommate she was disappointed not to see any animals falling from the sky. Her roommate still brings it up years later.
I'm just imagining someone with an umbrella looking up expectantly for falling cats.
There's actually a psychological mechanism behind these misunderstandings. Our brains naturally try to make sense of new information by connecting it to what we already know. So when we hear an unfamiliar idiom, we default to the literal meaning of the individual words.
And our native language interferes too, right? We try to find equivalent expressions that might not exist.
Absolutely. Linguists call this first language interference. It's why language learners often translate idioms directly from their mother tongue, creating these hilarious but sometimes embarrassing situations.
The thing is, these embarrassing moments are universal. Everyone learning a language goes through them.
Totally. And in business settings, these misunderstandings can have serious consequences. I heard about this marketing executive who told his international team to cut corners on a project to meet a deadline.
Oh no.
The team took it literally and removed all design elements with corners, producing completely rounded marketing materials that looked nothing like the brand guidelines.
That's actually incredible commitment to misunderstanding.
The client was furious, the campaign had to be completely redone, and they lost the account, all because of an idiom.
That's an expensive miscommunication.
Another case was this sales rep who told a potential client he'd put all his eggs in one basket regarding their partnership.
Which actually means the opposite of what you want to tell a client.
Exactly. The client thought he was saying they'd be risking everything on this one deal with no backup plan. They walked away immediately, costing the company a six-figure contract.
These literal interpretations versus actual meanings can really create some painful workplace moments.
But there are ways to avoid these kinds of mistakes, which is what we'll talk about next.
Wait, you're telling me there's hope for people like me who once told my boss I was keeping my ear to the ground and then actually pressed my ear against the office floor?
There's definitely hope, and we'll get to those strategies right after this. So English idioms can get you in serious trouble if you misunderstand them, but how the heck are you supposed to learn them correctly?
That's the million-dollar question. I've definitely had my share of idiom mishaps.
The problem is, most people just try to memorize the meaning without understanding where the expression came from.
Right? It's like trying to remember a joke without understanding why it's funny.
Exactly. Take bite the bullet. Knowing it comes from battlefield medicine gives you this mental image that helps the meaning stick.
That's way more effective than just memorizing endure something difficult without context.
The second big thing is seeing idioms used in real situations. You need to hear them in action to really get when they're appropriate.
Absolutely. Context is everything with idioms. It's the difference between sounding natural and, well, sounding like you're bringing ducks to a meeting.
Which is why I always recommend learning idioms from actual English content, TV shows, movies, podcasts, you know?
Real-world English at its finest. You hear not just the idiom, but the tone, the situation, the reaction, everything that tells you how it's really used.
Like in Friends, when Chandler says he needs to bite the bullet before doing something uncomfortable, you instantly get the feeling of reluctantly facing something you'd rather avoid.
Way more helpful than a textbook definition.
Since it's spring, let's look at some seasonal idioms. Turn over a new leaf is perfect for this time of year.
Oh, I like that one. But what's the connection to springs?
It actually refers to turning to a new page or leaf in a book, but people use it more in spring because it's when leaves grow back on trees. Perfect metaphor for fresh starts.
That makes so much sense. So you might say, after failing that project, I'm turning over a new leaf with my time management.
Exactly. Then there's spring fever, that restless, energetic feeling you get when warm weather arrives.
Like when you can't focus at work because you just want to be outside?
That's it. The whole office has spring fever today. Everyone's staring out the windows instead of working.
These contextual examples make such a difference.
Another important tip, before using an idiom in an important situation, double-check its meaning with a native speaker or a reliable dictionary.
Yes. Nothing worse than confidently using an idiom only to see confused faces staring back at you.
And don't be afraid of making mistakes. Seriously. Every language learner messes up idioms, it's practically a rite of passage.
It's true. I once told my boss I was pulling his leg when I was actually trying to say I was supporting his idea.
What did he say?
He looked very confused and said, "Please don't touch my legs at work." Mortifying.
But you learned from it. That's what matters. Comparing idioms between languages can also help understand how different cultures express similar ideas.
It's fascinating how the same concept can be described so differently. Where English says it's raining cats and dogs, other languages talk about raining chair legs or raining like a cow peeing.
Exactly. Understanding these differences helps you appreciate the cultural thinking behind idioms.
So the key takeaways: learn the origin, understand the context, see them used naturally, verify before using, and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
That's it. And remember, the worst that can happen from misunderstanding an English idiom is, well, you might end up with 5 ducks in your office.
Or a stuffed elephant in your meeting room.
Or a chipped tooth from biting metal objects.
Small price to pay for a good language learning story.
Learning languages is all about making mistakes and learning from them. That's what makes it interesting. Each error is just a step toward fluency.
Speaking of interesting idioms, wait till you hear about these spring expressions coming up next.
Spring is here, so it's the perfect time to share some awesome spring idioms. These will instantly make you sound like an English pro.
I'm ready to level up my English game. Lay them on me.
First up is April showers bring May flowers. It means good things come after hardship, like how rain in April leads to beautiful flowers in May.
So it's kind of like that saying, after the storm comes the calm?
Exactly. You might say, this project is tough, but April showers bring May flowers. Our hard work now will pay off next quarter.
That's actually really useful. I could use that in so many situations.
Next is turn over a new leaf. Perfect for spring when trees grow new leaves. It means to make a fresh start or change your behavior for the better.
So like when someone decides to quit their bad habits?
Precisely. The origin actually comes from turning to a new page in a book, but it's used more in spring because of the new leaf imagery. You might say, after missing those deadlines, I'm turning over a new leaf with my time management.
I definitely need to turn over a new leaf with my alarm setting habits.
We all have something. Then there's spring fever, that restless, energetic feeling when warmer weather arrives.
Is that why I can't focus at work when it's nice outside? I just want to be anywhere but at my desk.
That's exactly spring fever. The office has serious spring fever today. Everyone's staring out the windows instead of working.
I've got a terminal case of it every April.
Another good one is spring chicken. It refers to a young, inexperienced person, but you'll usually hear it in the negative form, no spring chicken.
So when someone's getting older,
Right, like at 45, he's no spring chicken, but he still runs marathons. It's a gentle way to acknowledge someone's age without being rude.
I need to remember that one. Much nicer than calling someone old.
Then there's spring as a verb in idioms like spring to life, meaning to suddenly become active or energetic, and spring into action, meaning to react quickly.
So if my boss needs something urgently, I might spring into action.
Exactly. When the client called with an emergency, the whole team sprang into action.
I like how dynamic that sounds. Makes you seem really proactive.
Another beautiful spring idiom is in full bloom, originally describing flowers, but often applied to people or careers at their peak. Her career is in full bloom after winning that award.
That's such a vivid way to describe someone at their best.
And finally, spring cleaning, which literally means deep cleaning your home after winter, but it's often used metaphorically too.
Like cleaning up your life?
Exactly. I'm doing some spring cleaning of my social media accounts and removing negative people. The cultural background is that people would deep clean after having windows closed all winter.
I should probably do some spring cleaning of my email inbox. It's getting scary in there.
The key to using these idioms naturally is hearing how native speakers use them in context. Try using one in conversation this week and see how it goes.
I'm definitely going to try spring into action at work tomorrow. My boss will be impressed.
Just start with one, then gradually add more to your vocabulary. Once you master these spring idioms, we can move on to summer ones.
Can't wait. Though I should probably master these first before I bite off more than I can chew. Wait, is that an idiom too?
It absolutely is. See, you're already speaking in idioms without even realizing it.
English idioms can be total disasters when taken literally, but when used correctly, they make your conversations way more interesting and bring you closer to sounding like a native.
It's all about practice, right? The secret is not being afraid to mess up.
Exactly. Everyone should just bite the bullet and try using idioms in conversation. Without actually biting real bullets, of course.
So that's an important clarification after everything we've talked about today.
Absolutely. And don't forget to subscribe for our next episode about summer idioms.
Can't wait to hear what people do with dog days of summer.
Please don't bring actual dogs.